RealTuners Radio.
So, do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. Register for these at realtuners.com. Click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more info or to make a reservation, go to realtuners.com or message us at RealTuners LLC on Facebook. Learn how to tune your own standalone EFI systems like Holley, FuelTech, Fast, and others on the chassis dyno. And now we've announced new GM, Gen 3, and Gen 4 2-day classes taught by James Short of Shore Tuning. Our classes cover such topics as traction control, individual cylinder tuning on a budget, safe tuning for maximum power, and power adder tuning. Upcoming classes with available seats are as follows. General Motors Gen 3 and Gen 4 factory ECU tuning with HP tuners at Trick Pro Motorsports in Palm Bay, Florida on December 1st and 2nd. And our new advanced standalone tuning for drag racers will debut at Kevin Smith's shop, KSR Performance in Gainesville, Florida on November 17th and 18th. This is a brand new class and Kevin's shop is the place to catch it first. Chicago area people, listen up. We have seats open at the standalone EFI Essentials class on October 27th and 28th in Rockford, Illinois. Details are in the live EFI tuning classes menu at realtuners.com. Welcome everyone to episode 63 of RealTuners Radio. Tonight we're talking with Michael and David Matyjasic, who we were fortunate enough to hang out with in picturesque Blytheville, Arkansas last weekend as they smashed ECTA records in their time-bombed second-generation Camaro. And as always, we have our usual panel of hosts, John Bewley from Little John's, Tom Sewell from Fuel Injector Development, Bill Fowler now with Big Hat Racing, Ry Klemp from Bull City Speed, Mark Dahlquist from Throttles Performance, James Short with Shore Tuning, possibly Logan Tarrant from Clapped Out, and our engineer Scott Evans from Helix Tuning, and finally me, Scott Clark with RealTuners. And it's a lovely evening, October 3rd, 2018. This is episode 63 of RealTuners Radio. How are you guys doing out there tonight? Hopefully, everybody can hear us. We had a little scare about 15 minutes ago. The whole Verizon tower that I'm hooked to, all the stuff goes over a hotspot. And the tower I'm hooked to screwed up. All the phones stopped working, everything at the house, but it only glitched for a couple minutes. So anyway, I will, without further ado, bring in my pals who are on the call. Gentlemen, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Yep.
Everybody waits. I'm like, it's broken. Oh, okay. There they are. All right, cool. So, interesting week. Kind of an interesting week in land speed racing. I mean, everybody saw the Ducks race. Everything was cool there. Your usual surprises and weather. They had fought the weather this time, and I watched the live stream a lot while I was at the track. While I was in Blytheville, Arkansas, with the Matyjasic brothers. We did the East Coast Timing Association's Arkansas Mile, their third event for the season, and it went really well. The weather was much nicer this time. We got a lot of opportunity to make passes. It was all good. So, so who do we got? We got Mike and or Dave on here?
Yeah, I think we're both on here.
Both of you are on there, and both your phones are working? That's crazy.
Yes, I know how to use an app and technology. It's a miracle.
Technology, it's amazing. Can't get a fucking wheel speed sensor to work, but I can get my phone to work.
Yeah. Ouch. That one stings a little bit.
Oh, it's all right, man. We had some weirdness. It's probably my guidance was mistaken, but we did not have... Dude, these guys pedaled it to 232 miles an hour in the standing mile in a car that's full weight, full, all the chassis and safety requirements for the East Coast Timing Association, which is pretty aggressive and crazy. Are you a B or a C motor?
C.
So what's the displacement on that LS?
It's a 6 liter 30 over.
Gotcha. Okay. So is that like a 408?
Like 374, something like that.
374? Gotcha. Okay. Damn. So anyway, the previous record that you had established at 227 miles an hour, really you just legged this one up there and did it with some fucking weird chassis issues too, right?
Yeah, after reviewing the video here, everyone will get to see that video here shortly. We're in the editing process, but after looking at all the videos and just driving the car, seems like it was more aerodynamic than it was steering.
You think so?
Wish I would have figured it out sooner. So.
Yep, I can believe that, man. Do you think it's what Joe Timney was talking about with it spilling off to one side and kind of oscillating back and forth? Or what do you think it was? Or can you talk about that? Is that top secret?
Yeah. No, there's no Chinese secrets here. The deal was back in April, we had lots of issues with the car bottoming out. So tried to extend the travel limiters, which gave the nose some more height under acceleration. I think we were just getting some air underneath the nose that caused the thing to oscillate back and forth. Anything above about 215 miles an hour. And, looking back at it after reviewing both, the 222 mile an hour pass, which was the first one, and then looking at the 232 pass after that, the speed change, it didn't start oscillating till a lot higher in the mile per hour on the second pass. And that was due to us pulling another link out of the chains that keep the nose from going higher.
Right.
So if we would have figured that out the track and had an opportunity to make more passes without losing clutch.
So this was close to happening if we'd have gone faster the first time out when we went 228 or 227. I mean, do you think? Because does it happen just like right at 230, or?
Well, no, it was the 227 pass. The suspension was locked down another inch lower than where we were at now as far as the amount of travel. The ride height was still about the same, but it's all in how much we're letting the nose travel up under acceleration. So we tried it because the track is so bumpy for anything going over 200 miles an hour. We tried to allow the suspension to move a little bit more, and that proved to be unsafe. So
gotcha.
When Mike 222 pass, the suspension was all the way up, and it was, the oscillation started at 200 miles an hour. Then when we took it back to the pits, we took one link out, which is about an inch of travel. Then he went, into the 210 to 15 range before it started to oscillate really bad. And so we think that if we go down again, then it's going to get us to, who knows how fast, but probably up into 230s, 240s. But I also think that letting it travel up also affects the suspension geometry. So not only as the suspension travels up, right, your camber changes. So I think that probably also had a multiplying effect on the actual oscillation and all the weird stuff going on.
Gotcha. Do you mind if I play that video, the 232?
If it'll play, yeah.
Yeah, it'll play on here, I think. Hold on, I got it queued up already. See if you can watch this on the YouTube stream. It's short. It's 31 seconds. All right, now watch this thing start to get weird here shortly. He's got his hand on the chute lever. Now look at it start oscillating left and right there. Yeah, that's an aerodynamic thing. That's nuts. Still legged it out to a 232 mile an hour hit though. That was pretty badass. Yeah, so we just streamed that. Hopefully that worked. Did you guys see that on YouTube? Anyway, yeah, so That's freaking weird, man. That's an example of stuff you can run into that you just don't see coming, aerodynamically speaking.
Yeah, it's also really hard to troubleshoot when you have to go 200 miles an hour to figure it out.
Right. No kidding. And in a short distance.
Yes.
Oh, that was nuts.
For those of us who couldn't see the video, what was oscillating from the in-car camera?
Go ahead.
The whole car.
The whole car. Yeah, the body was waving back and forth.
Yeah, the body. Yeah, so it was uncomfortable to drive, but it was still one hand on the steering wheel and no steering correction needed. It was just from the driver's aspect, it literally looked like the fenders were just chasing each other up and down, basically like a seesaw effect kind of deal.
Reminds me
It
of being
looked like
in a
an
bass
old
boat.
Cadillac at about 70 miles an hour.
Right. Rocking around.
Or a boat. Yeah, a boat that starts to China walk a little bit. You get that back and forth where, right before it goes to try to throw you out of the boat. Yeah.
Right, exactly. You're making way too much power and there's way too little of the boat touching the water and it's just riding on the prop. That's what it reminded me of. It'll start rocking left and right, a little bit skittish. But I mean, it didn't feel horribly out of whack. You said it didn't feel as bad as it looked in the video, right?
The 222 pass was definitely like 10 times worse. Which I felt it on my shakedown passing, but I only went, I let out of it at 212. I let out of the throttle. So I just that the car is making a ton of power up there, and it's hooked up. So I just thought it was a car moving around a little bit. No big deal. I could drive through that all day. But yeah, it was way more apparent on the first pass, the 222 mile an hour pass. When I put it up into third gear, it started doing that, and I think I had pedaled it out there. You look at the data log, but I think I pedaled it 3 or 4 times just to knock some speed down, and still went 222. I just pinned my foot in it to get through the traps, and it's kind of what I did. On the next pass, the 232 pass was just hey, I'm close. The car's still going straight. It's shaking, but nothing too major. Got my hand on the parachute. Everything will be just fine. Just keep my foot pinned in, and it's all good.
Just as long as I go faster than my brother did last pass. Classy. Now that seemed to work. Hopefully you guys could see that. Let us know if you didn't. So anyway, all right on.
Yeah, so Dan Parker asked, does it have sway bars? Yes, it has a giant Hotchkiss sway bar in the front. We actually...
And we chased that for a while. I've got that bushing was in my rental car. They found a bushing that was questionable. An end-link bushing.
And it seemed to be more of an effect than a cause, but it actually popped one of the rubber bushings out of the sway bar, and it's still factory sway bar and link, so it's got 2 sandwich donut bushings, one on the top for the control, or one on the bottom for the control arm, and then one on the top of the bar. So we ended up pushing one of those out, and then on the other side of the car, it started to actually mushroom it, so we loosened those back up a little bit as well. Didn't seem to have an effect at all.
Got to remember, Dan's trying to go just as fast as you, and he can't see where he's going.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an advantage.
Right? Sometimes.
In theory, he'd probably feel it before we did, because we're paying attention with our eyes. So maybe I'll put him in the car and he can figure it out.
Well, yeah, so that was a good time. I mean, you guys were thrashing on the car trying to figure out that issue the whole weekend, but it still went fast. Our buddy Rick Lind, who we worked with, also went pretty fast. I don't know if Sewell's on here or not, but Sewell spec'd out all his turbo and injector setup, and Sewell, he's out of turbo. He did that on purpose. So he's going to come back and buy bigger turbos from next winter. But I think he did that on purpose. I think we're out of turbo on Rick's car. He went 230, what? 236?
Sick.
Yikes. I mean, like you said, it wasn't long ago you could show up at an East Coast Timing Association meeting. If you went 215, 218, or 220, I mean, you were pretty much walking around like the hero. And that's, you wouldn't even be somebody in either of you guys' classes with those numbers. So shit's gotten fast in the last couple of years.
Something you mentioned right off the bat is there's some crazy safety rules. I'm kind of curious to know some of those safety things, because it's a touchy subject that people are into right now because of some recent events, and I think it's worth talking about some of that safety stuff that you guys do to make that car super safe. Because if you wreck it if you wreck at 236 miles an hour without that safety equipment, it's game over.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. For me personally, we're actually, the car was built around 2007 when I was a lot younger and know a lot less than I do now about building proper safety equipment and how to build a car. So I'm actually looking at just gutting and completely rebuilding that cage. But essentially, the rules at a minimum for any car going over 175 miles an hour is a full cage. So by full cage, it's at least 10 points. And then 10 pounds of fire suppressant in the car. It's preferred that you have a 5 pound for the engine compartment, a 5 pound for the passenger compartment at a minimum, and separate them. And then at least one parachute. Over 225 miles an hour, it's recommended to have 2 parachutes. So there's a lot more into it. Hans devices are mandatory. SFI,
so basically that's like 850 cage when you say 10 point, right? 850 cage basically for drag racers.
Yeah, I'm not.
And then that's what you're saying there is it's an 850 cage. We got a lot of drag racers that listen, so I wanted to relate it to them. That's what that is. It's 10 point basically. And then you're saying 2 separate fire bottles, one for the engine compartment, one for the driver compartment, right? Which I think a lot of people don't understand the importance of both. They think, I have one in the engine, but they don't think about the flames coming from other places.
Yeah, the requirement is only, I believe it's only 1 10-pound bottle. But we had Joe
gotta have nozzles in both places.
Oh yeah, for sure. You definitely want them. And it varies. The key thing to remember with fire systems, which I'm not highly educated on, but I do know that depending on the system that you have, you need to follow that manufacturer's instructions specifically, because the different kind of fire suppression agents that they use require them to point in different directions. So you always want one at your feet, but the direction that it points to make sure that it sprays in the appropriate manner. Like, Halon's very, cloudy, whereas a lot of the new stuff's all foam based. So they have different requirements. You want to make sure that you actually read those requirements, understand them, and build your system to that specification.
Do they require foam or do they require gas for the fire suppression?
They require a certified fire suppression system. So they don't specify brands, and then there's some rules about how it's activated. There's some really cheap systems out there that are basically like a fire extinguisher with a cable attached to the handle. Like, those aren't allowed.
They want temperature sensors that actually set it off is what they want, right?
No, like my system still has pull cables in it, but it has the pull cable where when you pull the cable, it's not pulling a lever. It's literally pulling the cable, and it's basically releasing a pin that goes and stabs the foil seal on the top of the bottle so that it empties all the way out no matter what as soon as it's released.
That's what brand just curious, what brand of fire system did you end up with in your car?
I have old Firefox Halon system in mine, understanding that is like a cancer-causing agent. It also puts fire out the best. So I'd rather
buy that.
It's in the bottle. It's fine.
You can't get Halon anymore, though. Mike can comment on what system I think Joe sells at
Delaware Chassis Works. Joe Timney. Yep. Who we need to get on here sometime soon. Sorry, go ahead.
Do they require anything special for the restraints? Like, obviously, we're all used to seeing, hey, here's a 5-point harness, but is there extra things they need? Like, we know Hans device, but are there helmet tethers as well that go back to the seat? Is it required to have any kind of a containment seat of any kind?
Yeah, so there's a couple different options for that. I believe you either have to run a full containment seat or you have to run NHRA style funny car cage with all the padding in it. But either way, you have to have something that protects your head from lateral movements, right? So if you think about it, the Hans protects you from,
front and back, yeah,
front and back, but it doesn't protect you on the side to side, especially if you have the road race model, which will allow your head to twist. So then you have to also have something that protects it from side to side. So Bonneville rules actually have to have the driver's side stick out even further than everyone else's rules do because of the Danny Thompson Mustang crash where he had the crappy seat in the car, and even with the Hans, his head was bouncing around in there. So they freaked out and made a rule that makes it almost impossible to get in and out of a door car. But everyone else still requires just like a standard side head restraint where the driver's side is slightly shorter than the passenger side.
Very cool. Too much silence. Time to take a drink.
That's always interesting. It's always interesting to hear some of that stuff because a lot of guys don't understand just how much safety equipment goes into those cars. Obviously, you said, hey, they recommend 2, but they tell you 1 is fine. I'm sure there's a certain point where they say, hey, you have to have 2. Do you know where that is? There a point where they get to that?
I think it's different for Bonneville, so I don't recall offhand what their rules are, but for standing mile, it's anything over 250. You need 2 chutes. So we run 2 chutes just because we have stock brakes on the car still. And they're 11-inch rotors, and those pads are gone. The rotors are glazed over after 1 pass. So we have a really
sounds like you need to talk to Bill about that one.
Yeah, we have a really long tether Bonneville ribbon chute that we pull first to stabilize the car, and then we have a regular cross form chute that we pull. That's what knocks the speed down.
So it's just like a drag chute that has something to kick out first to pull the chute, but it's a little bigger than that just to kind of get it started to square it up before the big one comes out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's really weird. You'd have to look it up. You'd have to look up a picture of it on the internet. It's like triangle shaped. It's probably 8 to 10 feet wide, but it's ribbons of chute material. So it kind of looks like a giant spaghetti strainer almost. That's just
looks like you sent a parachute through a paper shredder. Literally is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Partial speed reduction right there. It's not meant to kill it. It's just meant to kind of get it ready.
Or to work
so the jerk of the big chute isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so violent because you're moving out and those cars are heavy.
Yeah, our car's like 3,500 pounds.
Wow.
It's up there, but it's not that heavy. Some of the Bonneville cars will be 5,000-6,000 pounds.
Yeah, that's light for a land speed car for sure.
Right. Groovy.
Are there any aero safety things that they do? Do they require
what are those strakes over
anything
the
at high
roof?
speeds for?
Yeah, that everybody has to run.
Yeah, they require a roof rail on either side that runs parallel to the car. And that is just if you turn sideways to break that laminar airflow. And in theory, that helps keep the car on the ground. I don't know whether that's a real thing or not. I've seen, a lot of
absolutely does.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of cars roll over at Bonneville with those on there. So
sure,
it's like the same thing they do on NASCAR where they have the flaps that come out and they're literally designed to keep the car from rolling over.
Some of the Bonneville guys run those too. If I've got some customers with those,
yeah, I'd love to put those in my car.
You have to have them. It's not optional at above 200.
And some of the EC
rails. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking about the rails.
Yeah, and some of the ECTA rules have lessened a little bit on there over the last couple of years, especially on the newer model cars. I think it's Corvettes, Vipers, really higher end performance cars that have built-in aerodynamic stability, just in their design. Those specific cars, and they have a list in the rule book of those cars, don't have to have all the things that, say, a 71 Camaro has to have. Like the roof rails are no longer required on those type of cars, just for the fact that some of that stuff is already built into the car, so it doesn't flip over, kind of deal when you're sliding sideways. But while still highly recommended, it's not mandatory.
Gotcha.
And
Also highly recommended second pair of underwear, just in case.
Well, if somebody's interested, where do they go to get check this out? I mean, the East Coast Timing Association is ecta-lsr.com, right? I mean, that's probably the place to get started, or the Bonneville rules and get familiar with that, because it's all kind of an offshoot of that. That's scta-bni.org.
Yeah,
which is more strict.
Rule book.
Right. You can order a rule book off the website.
SCTA is the parent of all this in United States, North American land speed racing. So that's what all this stuff derives from. And then, ECTA, based on their insurance and some other things, can choose, because they're a sanctioning body under themselves. But by and large, they parallel both. I'm much more familiar with the SCTA rules than I am, because that's where I've been.
Right.
I haven't been to an ECTA event yet. What I know of ECTA is mostly just talking to Turk. So, which now he's out of that organization, but that's, what I understand about the similarities and differences, all come from him.
It was Keith Turk's last event this last weekend that he hit. It was kind of sad to be there, but Timney was there. They were partners all through the 90s and 2000s on this deal. And so it was his last event where he helped run the event. It was pretty cool. I was glad to be there. I wasn't there for his first, but I've been there for a lot of them. And then we were there for his last. It reminded me when I was with him 10, 12 years ago and they closed down LA County Raceway. We were at the last event of that too. But anyway, so Turk is no longer the owner or one of the owners of East Coast Timing Association. They've passed the torch, if you will. So thought that was cool. He's been on here before. You can go back and listen to the Keith Turk podcast episode. Interesting dude.
Yeah, so I can tell you that as far as building a car to the rule book, if you think that you're ever going to run an SCTA sanctioned event, you absolutely need to get their rule book and build it to their spec. If you build your car to an SCTA spec, all the other sanctioning bodies will accept that. The only difference...
That was going to be my next question, because I wanted to know which one was the lead that you can follow and make it work for all of them.
Yes, the only difference is, and this is sanctioning body by sanctioning body across the entire country, is if you're going to run on pavement, each individual sanctioning body has a different set of rules for what tires you can and cannot run, based on what they believe they're allowed to do.
I didn't even think about the tire side. What do you guys do for tires?
For a really long time, we ran Mickey Thompson drag radials, and I started to get concerned at the speed that we were going once we crested, the 210 and 210 level, and I knew we were going to be going faster than that. So we now run R7 compound Hoosiers, which do not hook nearly as well, but are definitely more...
They hold up at the speed.
In theory, they do. No one has blown a tire running a Hoosier R7 compound yet, but like anything else, it's always a yet. But I've seen a lot more and heard a lot more drag radials exploding. We also run B-locks on the back, which is not a requirement, but I would say is highly recommended if you're
extremely recommended at that speed.
Yeah. And believe it or not, my wife has joined the listening on the podcast. I just saw her sign in.
Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting him.
That's cool. What front tire do you guys run?
We run a Yokohama, I believe it is, a V-rated tire. I couldn't tell you which model it is. It is the shortest 15-inch tire that they make regardless of width. So,
bought it at the local Firestone, local refurbished tire place.
Yeah, I think it was Tire Rack for like $130 a tire or something like that. But it's it has to be, in order to meet the rule requirements, it has to be at least V-rated to go over 200 miles an hour. And I prefer, you can run front runners. I don't like to run them because they don't handle well, and I've seen them blow out before, especially on the bumps. They're just not designed for the loads that you get and the gaps in the concrete and the oscillation that you get. So I just choose to eat some speed up to have the stability and safety of having a radial tire on the front of the car. It also helps to lower the car. I mean, we still have a completely stock front suspension with coils cut in the front, with travel limiters. So you can only lower that so far before the suspension geometry is really jacked up and you just can't get it any lower. So we lower it the rest of the way by just changing the tire.
And you don't have a drop spindle?
Nope.
Factory
Wow.
1971 spindles. Yep. The other thing too with the and so the tires are Yokohama S drives, and they're W rated, so they're ZWs, which I think is I think it's the highest rate. Maybe it's a Y, whatever the highest rating you can get. It's either W or a Y. I can't remember. But they're rated for a sustained speed over 190 or something like that. But the other reason for the regular radial tire is if you can't stop, you can always make a corner. Worst case, you got enough tire to take that thing through the shutdown and around the shutdown corner and back up the return road. That's kind of the deal at a land speed event or a standing mile event is when you pull off the return road, you pull to the right because to the left is where the cars who lose their brakes go. If they can make the corner. And in fact, the owner of the current owner ECTA, Steve Strupp, after I made a 215 pass, he came in real hot after I made my pass. I was smart enough to pull to the right, and this was in Ohio. And as he's flying around the corner, I'm like, man, he's coming in hot. I see pieces of his brake rotor falling out of his parachute. So he lost all his brakes, and he ended up making the corner. He was probably going a good 80 miles an hour or so, but he wasn't running regular front runners either, I don't believe. He made it up the return road a good ways before that car came to a stop. But that's another one of the deals of if you needed to handle it, can kind of deal.
Yeah, so I was just involved. We've just put in the process of putting new bear brakes all the way around on Keith's Camaro, the one he runs with Freiberger. They're going to take the car out and see if they can finally get a record at El Mirage. I'm always sort of flabbergasted at some of the brakes you guys are running. And again, these aren't big, huge brakes because it's still a 15-inch wheel situation. But there are improvements out there. I mentioned the spindle thing because part of the deal was fitting a bit of an antique 2-inch drop spindle they have on the front of that car, which is also a second-gen Camaro. But that does help get the ride height down, which obviously is one of the biggest single things you can do for aero for land speed.
Yeah, our cross member is currently sitting at 1 inch above the pavement.
Wow.
I can't remember if we talked about this last time. What kind of clutch do you guys run?
That's about to change. So
a broken one?
Yeah. So this weekend,
dead smoked.
Scotty, put the good tune in it.
Yeah, we have finally discovered the limit of a Tilton 3-disc clutch. We are running a 7 1/4 inch, and I was picking up. They're just used NASCAR takeouts, which have gotten difficult to find since they went to the Dodge. I think it's 30 spline from the regular 26 spline GM. But the clutch holds great at however much power 27-ish pounds of boost is. However, at 30, that's it.
It just spun tires in every gear. That's what we thought at first. Like, damn, It didn't hook up anywhere. No, it was the clutch.
Yeah. So it's rated at 1,200 horsepower, I believe, is what the standard 3-disc is rated for. And it is held 13-ish to the flywheel. So it's been really good. Have had no problems. And then when Scott did the last tune-up on it, which was probably worth another 150-ish horsepower.
That's what I'm thinking. Yep.
It was just barely letting go too. So it would hold, and then it would get up into the power band and then it would spin again. So you know, it wasn't one of those things where it was just gone and we had nothing. It's literally just overpowering the clutch now.
My guess
it still went 218. Yeah.
Right.
What's the next step? 4-disc, 5-disc? I mean, where's it jump to?
I don't know. So you can now there's a couple of street clutches out there that hold 1700 horsepower. I believe McLeod makes a 3-disc custom clutch now. And then also I think RPS also makes one. Because
you ever heard of one of those things called an automatic?
Are they going to be small enough in diameter to fit with all your other ground clearance and bell housing situations?
Still has a factory liquid bell housing in it. The bell housing, the bottom lip on the bell housing is the low point of the car.
What motor is it? Does it?
It has it's an LS motor, but it has an LT1 8-bolt crank in it.
Oh, interesting. So you'd have to have some sort of custom flywheel probably made in order to use an LS style clutch, I guess.
No, because they're already making those. So my friend Ahmad had a C7 Corvette that had a 415 cubic inch motor with nitrous, and it made like 16-ish hundred horsepower. And he had an 8-bolt 3-disc clutch for his, and it never let go. That thing was awesome. So I know they're out there.
Yeah, I would say that 8-bolt flange, is it the newer style LT crank, I guess?
It's the same as an LSA.
Yeah, I was going to say LSA. I was going to say look up Monster clutch too. That's what I run in mine.
Yep.
I've got a 427 with twin 85s on it. And I've got one of their triple disc centered iron clutches in it. And it actually uses a stock LT1 pressure plate, but they stacked 3 centered iron discs underneath of it. That static load of that stock pressure plate, provides enough friction coefficient to, stay bit. It's only rated, I think, at 1500 horsepower, but, I've been on 30 pounds of boost with this 427, and I don't know what it makes at that, but it made 1230 to the tire on 18 pounds. So,
yeah. And I have contemplated going 4L80E with just to get the overdrive, because we're out of gear right now. I have a 1977 Cadillac Eldorado 240 gear in the back that has been rem polished, and that is the tallest gear that you can fit in an 8.5-inch rear. So,
are you all just have a 4-speed or have 5th and 6th seated out of it? I guess
has a G-force clutchless 4-speed.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, which is a dream transmission, and I hate to lose it, but I know that with a 4L80 with the new 3-disc, I think they have the 3-disc lockup clutches for them now.
Yep.
Like Big Red Camaro runs one where they just pull off the line and lock the clutch up and don't unlock it until they cross the finish line. And that seemed to work well for them. It seems to run pretty good. So
they hold the track record out there, don't they?
No, the Mustang holds a track record now.
Okay, which was what?
248.5.
Damn.
On Red's record of 244.
Wow.
Yeah, that car moves out.
Yeah. I believe they're running an old turbo Ford small block.
Yeah, it's like a Glidden-headed
motor. I couldn't remember what he said it was, but
it's a boosted small block Ford, like a 408 or something like that. It's badass though. I mean, it's pretty easy to make 1800 horsepower on those things.
Yeah, they took out the race motor that they had, the good land speed motor that they had built specifically to run the mile with, and they put in that drag race motor, and it managed to live, and it went way faster. So
yeah,
they picked up like 24 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour.
Wow. Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's probably 2,000.
That's like obliteration. That's, jeez.
That thing is nasty.
That's pretty ridiculous.
Really, yeah. And that previous generation Mustang fastback body is not the most aerodynamic in the front.
Have you guys done any? I'm assuming you've done some kind of wind chamber stuff with your car to figure out just how much of a toaster the front end of your car is.
Well, if you've seen a picture of the front of my car, it does not resemble a Camaro anymore.
No, this car's got pretty hardcore aero treatment with good data to back it up.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what the number is. The wind tunnel testing we had done before had an older generation mock-up of a nose we were going to build, and that got us to around 273 in the counts of drag. I believe that's
pretty low.
I believe with this setup, based on how much speed we've picked up for a given amount of horsepower, that we're probably down in the really low twos. That's
really good.
Like a 0.21 or a 0.22 coefficient of drag, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll probably figure that out here over the winter. I think I'm finally going to break down and just put it in the wind tunnel and just to see what the number is and see if the hypotheses that we have about certain pieces in the car actually are true or not, just so that I get the peace of mind out of it. But I mean, other than that,
when we had Cletus on, he said the stock Corvette was like 0.3 or 0.32 or something, right? Something like that.
Yeah, C4 is a really good car.
So having that 0.2 is like a really big drastic. That's
it's clearly a big
difference.
deal because they look at other cars that they race in class with much more power and much more expensive powertrain combos don't do as well or barely go as fast as these guys, and they know the difference is the aero treatment. You know what I mean? They're really
so to put it in perspective for everybody. So that 0.273 coefficient of drag, we went 212 miles an hour with 850 horsepower to the tires. We went 215 with this particular nose with 725. So with 175 less horsepower, we went another 3 miles an hour faster. So that kind of helped put it in perspective on how much more aerodynamic.
Wow.
You know, it's
and as an
lot
observation,
less power,
just
got
looking
us
at
faster.
Looking at the data logs these guys are making, it's interesting. You really can see 1 and 2 mile an hour differences because no matter what you do, the speed levels off towards the end of the run, right? Exponentially. You turn up the power, it's only gaining a couple miles an hour per second at the end of the pass. You know,
just like drag racing, a whole lot of power makes a little tiny bit of difference once you start getting up there.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. So their aero changes, their estimates seem realistic to me.
Yeah, and Turk, I wasn't going to shout out Turk's number, but he's actually down in the comments right now. So the best they got out of their 81 Camaro was a 0.21. And he says he suspects ours are equal or better than that, which I would believe we're probably down in the same range.
That's a big deal.
Do you guys have any kind of a wing on the back of the car? I'm assuming there's something.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's
some of their best tricks. Style. Yeah.
Scott, you got a picture of that thing somewhere you can light up, can't you?
Yep, I will. Hold on a second. I'll go to your website. Just a sec. Dun, dun, dun.
And
Talk
Mike
for 10 more
Perduto,
seconds.
yes, those Master Power turbos are still working awesome. They made
Is Mike on here?
They made over 30 pounds of boost. And
it seemed to still be picking up, man. It still picked up mile an hour when we turned it up and picked up power. I mean,
yep.
Okay, I'm navigating to your Looks like
Yeah.
There we go. We're back. Sorry.
Okay.
Lost
Yeah, we
audio
lost you for a second there. I don't know what happened.
No worries. The video stream's still working. So there's a picture of the car as it sits right now.
Yeah. Wow. That's kind of mean looking. I kind of like that.
Yeah. Pretty simple, but it kind of makes a big deal. You get the air dam in the front, and then the way you manage the air going around the car. But I guess the wing is the real trick. A lot of guys go wrong on the wing, I think, just kind of when people just try to slap stuff on there and think they're doing aero. The key is not to just go crazy on the downforce. The key is to do as much downforce as you can with minimal drag, right? So it doesn't cost you that much forward horsepower.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's adjustable.
Yes. Yeah. I won't get too far into the angles, but a lower angle actually at a certain point by dropping the spoiler, we both lose downforce and the counts of drag go up. And then as you raise the spoiler up in the back, you actually start to pick up a little downforce. And then it reaches a point where the drag starts to go down again. And the downforce also increases. Like there's a sweet spot in the spoiler based on how the air is coming down around and then down the back of the car. So,
and that varies obviously from car to car based on body shape and everything else.
It will. And then it'll also vary by the nose on the car. So like the angle on Keith's car, I don't remember offhand, but I believe the angle on Keith's car is different than the angle on my car as far as the drag and the downforce goes because of the shape of the nose on the car, right? Keith has a very stock nose on his car and mine is very unstock.
And you guys figured that out in the wind tunnel, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we basically...
there's not really any way you can figure it out driving the car. You actually have to go somewhere and test it and measure it.
You could do it if you had... if you could get a day that had the same weather conditions and you could do back-to-back passes in a lower horsepower car where like wheel spin and shift points and things like that had no effect on, like if you didn't spin the tires going off the line.
Super consistent day.
Yeah, like Dan Stokes used to race at the ECTA with an 81 Camaro, and that car had a straight 6 in it and it went like 106 miles an hour. Well, when you did aerodynamic stuff, you could instantly see whether it was slower or faster, and the changes you made were good. We got 6 or 7 miles an hour out of that car just by changing the aerodynamics to what we knew worked on that body. So
at the 100 mile an hour level, you got 6 or 7, which means at 200, it's even more exaggerated.
Yep. Turk also just mentioned in the comments, you can also do a coast down as well. So you accelerate the car to a certain speed and then you measure the distance it takes to coast down to X amount of speed.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, for those of you more interested, we did have another episode with Keith. We got further into the pool with the aerodynamic conversation. I notice in the picture that's on the YouTube right now, you don't have moon discs or whatever you'd want to call them on the front wheels. Is that
a thing?
I don't remember what the numbers were, but it like wasn't worth the time and effort for me. Keith could probably comment on what the number was for the addition of the moon discs. When we went beadlocks in the back, we went dirt track beadlocks, so they have the mud plugs in them. So they just came with wheel covers, which is why we run them.
Yeah, and the nose in the car also, where the air goes off that nose, nothing's hitting the tires unless you got a crosswind anyway. So, that's the other thing. A lot of this stuff is for crosswinds at Bonneville. Yeah, you need those wheel covers because you're killing drag. Whereas us, if it's a dead day, it's not making a difference for us whatsoever.
Kirk just mentioned that it was 0.001% difference.
Not enough to even bat an eye at.
Yeah.
I would imagine on like a Lakester, that's probably different because the wheel's out in the air. But on a door car, our nose is designed to shadow the front wheel. edge. So I imagine that helped with that a lot.
One of the interesting differences between an ECTA ECTA and the SCTA is your nose would move your car into completely different classes than the nose that Keith has on the front of theirs. And those little changes as to whether it's just a bumper below air dam or other things make a big difference in whether you're in a production or a modified, and the classes just go on forever in terms of that amount. Yours looks basically Studebaker-ish to my eye, but that could just be me.
Yes,
I fully agree.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a Studebaker is not very aerodynamic.
They like to swap
despite
ends.
what everyone on Bonneville thinks.
Yeah.
I'd really like to find an old Studebaker and build a race car out of it.
Just buy an old Studebaker race car. It's cheaper.
Right?
Well, yeah.
I know where there's a couple of them for sale.
Yeah, and also, our car is not legal for any ECTA class except for street, because there's no aerodynamic limitations to what you can do in the street class. We could run it in Comp Coupe if we put a belly pan on.
Yes, it's kind of why we like the street class, because it's just no holds bar aerodynamic. Anything your mind can think up, as long as you got headlights, wipers, and registered and insured, and all the inspection legal stuff, you can do whatever you want. So it makes for some interesting engineering, especially on our end. We got an aerodynamicist we work with a little bit too, and he actually designed the nose, and he's a really, really smart guy. It'll make you feel like you know nothing about anything in about 3 seconds, like 16 p.
Did we make it back? Hello. I lost everybody. My internet crapped out. It's coming back online though.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, we're back.
Working on it.
Sorry.
There we go.
Guess what happened again? The whole Verizon thing dropped out again.
Verizon?
Phone. Yeah, at my house. That was on my end. I think that windstorm we're having is screwing with things.
You need to pop up the radar.
No,
we haven't had that on the screen in a while.
Nothing. It shows there's literally no precipitation going on right now, but we got like 60 mile an hour wind gusts. I'm guessing that's what it is, but we're back online.
Can you show the wind on the radar?
I don't know. I'm sure you can some way, but I'm just happy to have everything back online. God, sorry about that, everybody.
You know what that can do?
Showing all our way of doing it. Look.
So
yours.
Make sure
your
that they can
internet's
still
as
hear
reliable as our speed sensor was
on Facebook. Yeah, no, it's only done it twice ever, and it's both in the last hour. It's did it at 7:40 tonight too. Literally, the house. It's all on Verizon. What is it, FiOS or whatever? But anyway, it's the Verizon over the tower deal, and it crapped out. Usually, it's super reliable, and the ice storms and everything else, and the power goes out. Can run this thing on a generator. Usually, don't have problems with the Verizon network, but. Somebody make sure we're still audible on the Facebook stream. Looks like we're still good on Mixler.
We are. I still see it.
Yep. People telling us
Let's
we can.
do that. Give away all the aerodynamic secrets of
Sounds
our car
great.
while you're away.
Right. How about giving those out again?
I don't know where we got lost.
You got about 6 seconds of delay.
Right.
I was just asking about the radiator on that car because there was nothing, obviously no grill in the front to let air in. And right when I was asking that, I think is when it dropped out. But I basically asked, hey, this car has no grill, so no way for air to get in. But what radiator were you using?
Yeah, it was just it's just a standard location, factory location for the radiator. It was just a 3-row B cool radiator, about 20 years old, and two spall fans, but it actually does a pretty good job of pulling air from underneath the nose. It pushes some air through it for sure. Without the fans, it does nothing. But the spall fans really move a ton of air through the radiator. Not that it's really doing much moving the coolant with all the BTUs that motor is making. So it's there and it functions, but I don't know how much it actually does. Just starting off, we start off with a ice cold engine and we preheat the oil. We have a giant dry sump tank. It holds about 14 quarts. It sits in the passenger seat of the car. And we preheat that before we run, so the engine's dead cold when we get started.
Are you have the engine sitting pretty low then? I'm assuming with the dry sump, and then you mentioned that the K member is sitting just about touching the ground. So I'm assuming the motor's way down, almost touching the K member.
Well, the motor's is actually in the stock position. It just runs regular 350 to LS1 adapters. So the oil pan's actually still up a good ways above the
wow.
It used to be when we were in a wet sump, the skid plate was basically touching the bottom of the oil pan. After I broke 2 oil pans when we first started doing this. Now it's, because it just runs a regular LS7 oil pan, that oil pan's really, really short. So it's up, probably 2 inches or so above the skid plate.
Anything special for the dry sump, or is it just kind of a stock LS7 dry sump system?
I literally bought it all used from Paul Falcon at LS1 Excitement. He pulled it right off a motor in front of me, put it in a box, and I put it right on our motor. Just
that's awesome.
Nothing special. Yeah, it works really good. I know the pumps do cavitate. Those factory pumps cavitate a good bit above 7,000 RPM, but when you're holding 14 quarts on the other end of that hose, all that weight seems
doesn't matter as much. Yeah,
issues. You're right. Yeah, it doesn't matter as much when you have all that oil sitting behind it.
We also run dash 10 braided, so it's slightly larger to the actual fittings in the pan than what the factory hoses run.
You just running like some 1030, 2050, 1040.
Man, I don't even remember what I put in there. How about that?
It's been in for a while.
Yeah. I think it's 1030. Well, we put it in April and made 1 pass. I'm not going to change 14 quarts of oil off of 1 pass. So
it actually
fresh motor
takes you guys to make a pass is what, something like 17 seconds, 18 seconds,
24, 26.
Yeah, that seems about right. Oh, 24, 26. Okay.
Yeah. That's from the time they basically start getting in the throttle, get off the push truck.
Is the push truck just because of gearing to get going? So you're not burning up a clutch?
So it doesn't kill a clutch. You got it. Yep. So it doesn't kill the clutch. Yep. It's a really long time on power. That's why a lot of drag racers show up to land speed events and just grenade their stuff on the first pass. They're
not prepared for it.
They're not prepared to hold your motor at full load wide open for 25 seconds.
I know.
Yeah,
that's
for half a minute. Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Long time.
Right. They show up with a car made to be wide open for 6 or 8 seconds at the most, and then they realize it's a half minute worth of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They realize that their lightweight connecting rods are a lightweight because they're now in pieces.
Right. Lightweight, lots of abuse.
3-piece crank, 2-piece connecting rods.
Yeah. Most of them actually start to blow up at about the half-mile mark. So,
Cool.
I'm sure there's some spectacular engine pieces going everywhere on some cars.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of spectacular breakage out there at all these top speed events.
The best breakage this past weekend was guy showed up with his fiberglass front end drag car, and at the I think just past the quarter mile, the hood started to buckle, and then just a little bit past that, or just before the half mile, it blew the whole front end of the car off.
And
he dragged it for another quarter mile underneath the front tires. So He had a mess.
You need to get Timney to explain his story because he saw it coming. He's like, not my mess to clean up.
No. Joe Timney was on the scooter down the road, the return road basically, and he saw the hood buckling and knew it was coming, so he stopped for the good view. And came back with a nice wild description of exactly what happened. But yeah, the guy was still dropping pieces as he was pushing into the trailer. So
I had a hood separate in pieces that was, fiberglass where it's, bottom made, top made, stuck together. And I had a hood delaminate and the top part come off at about 160 miles an hour on a license pass, and went a good ways up in the sky. Everybody said it was a pretty good visual to see.
It happens. You see it all the time, but it's interesting.
I can only imagine something coming apart at like 200, 220 miles an hour. I can only imagine fiberglass going everywhere at that speed.
Right.
Well, the guy didn't even slow down. He kept throttling after the car.
Of course.
Front of the car was stuck under the front of the car. He kept driving.
It can be confusing.
He went through the light, went through shutdown. They
went through the lights with a parachute out. Yeah.
It happens. You can get confused out there. In that poor guy's defense. He's probably listening. Confused. Screw you guys. I'm never going land racing again.
Hey, more power to him for keeping his foot in it and going, I got to get this record. I got to get it. I got to keep going.
For sure.
Well, when all the records are open out there, because it's a new track, anybody can get a record. It's not too hard.
Right.
So it's breaking the ones that people set. That's the problem. The first record is easy.
Gotcha. So, on another note, speaking of land racing, did anybody hear the news about the Team Vesco car, the Turbinator 2, which is a gas turbine engine, all-wheel drive powered, but it's wheel powered, and in Bonneville, it cracked the 500 mile an hour barrier, trapped at the end of mile 5 at 503 miles an hour. My understanding is that they're an impound with it, trying to back that record up. You have to back it up the next day. Well, the next day was today, and it got rained out. So I haven't heard if the event was still on or getting canceled because of the water or what, but because it's hard to drive the track off this time of year.
I was just reading right before the podcast here. They've shifted the course, and they're just waiting for it to dry out a little bit more, and it sounds like they're going to try to go after it in the morning.
Nice.
So, yeah,
all I know is if you go 500 miles an hour in a wheel car that you got to drive, that deserves its own recognition right there. You just drove a car 500 miles an hour.
Oh,
you didn't rocket a car. You didn't. You didn't fly.
Got traction issues all the way up. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm dying for the 507 pass tomorrow so they can get their 500 mile an hour record, like on the dot 500. And it'll be interesting for sure. I think they got the power. Just got to put it down and got to drive it.
Let me play this video real quick. Hold on here.
Hey, they're going to have to come up with a new hat color for the 5 Club.
Right? Here we go.
I say it should be brown, but ECTA's already got the brown ones.
Check this thing out. Look at how fast it goes from horizon to horizon right there. For those of you watched on the live stream. Yeah, horizon to horizon in what, 6 or 7 seconds? Something like that. That's what 500 mile an hour looks like. That is yeah, that's crazy. That was one of their passes where they went 493 miles an hour and average in the 5. God. So anyway,
it's literally like watching a commercial airliner go by.
Right. On the ground.
Holy shit.
People don't realize how rough the ground is, even the smoothest surface at 500 miles an hour, because it's changing elevation significantly per second. So that car is bouncing all over the place.
I've been in Blue Angel planes where they're flying at several hundred miles an hour, and even that looks slow compared to this car.
Right. No, this thing gets down, man. I'm telling you what, worth rewinding and going back and checking out. With that, we are about out of time for the evening. So thank you, Dave and Mike, for joining us tonight and keeping us entertained. This relatively low-key night. It was a good weekend,
no problem.
too.
Thank you.
looking forward to doing that again with you guys here pretty soon. So,
air show, hold my beer.
Right. So, anyway, all right, guys. Well, stick around. We'll chat for a little bit, but I'll send everybody off for the evening. Hey, we have seats open at our Chicago class. We have seats open at our, which is October 27th weekend, Saturday and Sunday. That's the standalone class. If you want to learn to tune like a Mega Squirt, Fuel Tech, Holly, I've got cars for that class already lined up as well. There's 5 or 6 seats left for that class. And then also, we have seats left for the, first weekend in December in Trick Pro Motorsports in Palm Bay, Florida. Check that out, RealTuners.com. That's an HP Tuners class on General Motors Gen 3 and Gen 4 ECUs. If you want to tune the factory stuff, come listen to me and James Short. Mostly James Short. Otherwise, that's about it right now. We got a class this next weekend in Dallas-Fort Worth, but it's already sold out. So look for another Dallas-Fort Worth GM class coming up soon. But anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.